everybody, and welcome back to the F2 show by Inside F2. Formula 2 crowned its 7th champion in the form of Théo Pourchaire this weekend at Yas Marina. And joining me to review the final round of the season and to talk about our champion, we have Inside F2's Aaron Harper and Lawrence Griffin. Chaps, only one place to start, and that's obviously with Théo Pourchaire. He's the 2023 Formula 2 champion, joining Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Nick De Vries, Mick Schumacher, Oscar Piastri and Felipe Drugovich in the history books. And despite it being his third season, he's become the second youngest Formula 2 champion ever. Only Charles Leclerc was a younger champion. And he did it in great style, didn't he, Aaron?
Yeah, he did. His final race weekend wasn't without its problems, considering he qualified 14th on Friday. And he had to make sure he kept his nose clean in both races and make progress. So I think that shows the mark of the driver that he is. He's able to manage the pressure, keep it clean. We know how chaotic Formula 2 can be, and we saw it in the sprint. There was a spinner in the middle of the pack, and quite easily Théo could have been caught up in all of that. He avoided it all. He defended against Fred Vesti, probably a bit harder than I thought he might, and maybe I thought he should, all things considered, because if they'd made contact and he got a puncture or something, it could have opened the door for Fred Vesti to walk through. But he managed it beautifully, and he came across the line. And finishing fifth seems to be a good way to win a world championship, because let's not forget, I don't think they would class it as a world championship, but it does qualify for a world championship because the series covered 3 continents this year.
Exactly that. He is Formula 2's first ever world champion. I don't think, Formula 2 definitely aren't labelling it as world champion. They're just saying Formula 2 champion, are they? But you're 100% right. It is world champion. And also champions, ART, they win the team's title for the first time in the modern era of Formula 2. They haven't won it, which is something that surprised me, Lawrence. I think the combination of Théo Pourchaire and ART has been lethal over the last couple of years, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely has. And you've seen him come in as a very young driver, even, having a relationship with ART from Formula 3, and then building on that through F2. He's been with them for 3 seasons, and just going in with that team when you've got such little experience. When he was 17 when he joined the series and was a race winner in his first season. Clearly, we've seen in the past, just look at how Drugovich performed in an MP last year. When it clicks with a team, it really works, and it clearly clicked with him from the beginning. And I think you would be forgiven after 2 seasons without winning the title to try and go elsewhere and try it with a different team. He stuck with ART, and that's really paid off. And you've seen the team perform to the best as a whole with both drivers this season. We used to talk about the curse of the second seat in ART, which is no longer the case with Victor Martins. What an unbelievable season he's had. Absolutely blistering pace at times this year. And, I think it's probably maybe helps even push Théo Pourchaire a little bit in his rookie season. So a really good year all round for ART. And with those 2 drivers, it's no surprise to see them winning the team title.
Completely agree with you, Lawrence. I think it's been the strongest driver pairing, obviously, on the grid this season. Victor Martins has really come into his own in the second half of the season. Victor Martins actually outscored Théo Pourchaire if the championship started in Spielberg. Yeah, by 1 point. That shows how much he has come along in the second half of the season. I think the talent's always been there. We saw it in the first half of the season, but he just couldn't string a few results together, could we? We saw it in Jeddah, for example, where he had the pace, but just couldn't convert in the race. So it's definitely been a really strong year for ART. Their most successful year, obviously, in Formula 2. What do you think, Aaron, was the standout moment? Was there one particular moment in terms of the title race? And I don't want to go into it too much, because we're going to do that on our post-season review podcast, which is going to come out in the next couple of weeks. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Just touch on it quickly. What was the turning point for Théo Pourchaire? What is it that's won him the championship this year?
Sheer consistency. We were talking about it pre-podcast, discussing sort of where Vesti lost the title, really, because he had a couple of non-scores that really hurt him. And you revealed to me that Théo Pourchaire scored 7 podiums in feature races this year, and that's where the big points are handed out. So it's shown that switch from a feature race on a Saturday to a Sunday has paid off, because now the big points are paid out at the end of the weekend. You've got to keep yourself alive all the way through the weekend, make sure you're doing the job really well across the weekend and collecting as many points as possible. And Pourchaire, I always felt he needed to win another race, but that sheer consistency has shown it can still propel you all the way to a championship if needed. He's shown he's had the speed and he's able to win races. There's no doubt about that. He was in championship mode doing everything he needed to do. So he's a worthy world champion, absolutely.
Yeah, you mentioned the wins there. One win for our champion this season, which is quite incredible. Which you could take it as a positive or a negative, but I think you've got to look at it and say that shows the consistency. You mentioned the number of podiums, the ability to be able to be there week in, week out, and I think he's really taken a step back and just gone, I just need to rack up as many points round by round and not put too much pressure on making the crazy moves and being the absolute fastest every round, because it won't happen. And if you take that risk, you bin it when you could have a podium, you lose all that points, and then several rounds of margin you've built over your title contender is gone all of a sudden. So the fact that he's been able to do that with only one win, I think really speaks to his maturity in his third season, yet still at such a young age, as we've mentioned.
I think he would have won more races if he wasn't thinking about the championship and it wasn't his third season. I think he would have taken more risks and he would have won more races. I think Monza, for example, I think he could have won that race, but he was being conservative because he was thinking about the championship. So perhaps another season he would have won more races, but he did everything he needed to do, didn't he? And the lowest amount of wins by a champion in Formula 2, Mick Schumacher, obviously he went to the title in 2020 with only 2 wins, but one win for Théo Pourchaire was enough. So triumph for Pourchaire, despair for Vesti, and I think everyone feels for him, don't they? Gave it a real good go. 6 wins this season. Only Charles Leclerc and George Russell have won more races in a single season than Frédéric Vesti. However, 4 of those were sprint race wins, 2 of those feature race wins. You got a feel for him, Lawrence, haven't you? He's given it a go all season long, but maybe just too many sprint race wins, not enough feature race wins. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even then, 2 feature race wins is double what Théo Pourchaire got. But you look at it's the weekends like Spa, like Monza, where it's just those tiny little moments where championships can be lost, and that is what Fred Vesti will probably take away from this. But I think having got those wins and shown the performance throughout the season, he's made his talent pretty clear and has sort of been the breakout driver from this season. Everyone knew Théo Pourchaire was going to be probably the outright favourite for the title, but it was a question of who else was going to make that step up and challenge him, and Fred Vesti has done that brilliantly and led large parts of this year. So I think he will hold his head high, knowing that he's raced well and fought all the way to the end. This weekend in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, absolutely. Aaron, agree with that. Obviously, as you just mentioned the stat, 7 wins for Pourchaire. Sorry, 7 podiums for Pourchaire in feature races. Only 5 feature race podiums for Vesti. Was that the thing that got away from Vesti?
Yeah, I mean, we were speaking beforehand as well, weren't we? The 2 podiums that Pourchaire has got over Vesti both came on occasions where Vesti either didn't start or didn't make it around the first lap. So those 2 non-scores in the Spa and Monza feature races were punished almost as heavily as they possibly could be by Pourchaire. All things considered, he was in championship management mode. He knew he didn't need to win the race. He didn't need to take that risk. It would have been a silly risk to take. So, Fred gave it a right good go, and his weekend in Abu Dhabi was superb. His sprint race was just excellent. We did the live stream together, didn't we, Fraser? We were just in awe. He was beautifully poised on the brakes, making those overtakes. And again, in the feature race, made the progress, made his strategy work as best he could. He just simply needed some bad luck to fall Pourchaire's way, and then he would have been champion, not Théo Pourchaire. But Pourchaire kept his nose clean and got the job done.
fitting that Saturday was all about Frederick Vesti and Sunday was all about Teo Porcher, and Sunday was all about Aaron. That's the two standout drivers this year, and they almost had a day each, didn't they? Is that fitting?
Yeah, I think it tells the story of the season quite nicely. They're the top two drivers. Vesti got the win in the sprint, and Porcher got the championship on Sunday. But then we also had a little cameo from Jack Doohan, didn't we?
We did. We're going to get onto that very shortly. Obviously, Frederick Vesti, leaves the series with the joint most ever F2 sprint race victories with Liam Lawson and Luca Giotto, 5 sprint race victories, and also leaves with the most number of sprint race victories in a single season as well, which equals Liam Lawson in 2020. So he has certainly left his mark on the series. By the way, I forgot to say, Frederick Vesti and Zane Maloney last lap incident. Your thoughts on that, Aaron? I'll come to you first. What were your thoughts on that one?
It's just a racing incident, isn't it? Neither driver really did anything that was guilty. If that's the right word to use.
Yeah.
One of those things. I think the proximity of where the cars were, the tyre condition for Maloney, he was desperately trying to hang on to that podium. Vesti was doing everything he could to take it. Just one of those things. And it's a shame that Maloney didn't finish the race at least in 4th position, because he'd done a brilliant job up to that point. He deserved to be maybe on the podium, but at least in the top 4. But Vesti was going for it. He knew he needed to make that move. And in fairness, it was a bold move, and he did really well to get it done and also not end up in the wall, because the car bouncing across the curb, that could have been curtains for not just his race, but his championship too.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Lawrence, race incident?
Yeah, I think so, and yeah, thank goodness for the reprofiled turn 9, allowing that kind of mood. If we'd been going back to the old chicane, there would have been absolutely none of that. It would have been single file through there, unless you're Checo Perez on the closing day, I think it was, which was sublime. But we don't see that really ever. So it was a brilliant move, using the width of that corner, using all of the width of that corner and a bit more. And to hang it around the outside is brilliant. And you could see Maloney sort of corrected midway through the corner, and Vesti kept his foot in it, knowing that the space was going to squeeze. And he trusted Maloney that wasn't going to deliberately force him out. Maloney sliding wide, they touch, they make the slightest touch. And obviously it looks dramatic because of the way that Vesti catches the curb. I think he was definitely entitled to room, was Vesti. There was nothing in it from Maloney. I think if Vesti had retired and Maloney had continued on, that maybe wouldn't have been a racing incident. It's easy to say racing incident when Vesti was able to continue. I don't know what the result would have been. But yeah, there's two drivers using, every millimetre of space, and just with, no grip on the last lap, sliding slightly wide, the faintest touch sends someone spinning around. You'd hate to start penalising those kinds of incidents, because that sort of close racing is what we love to see most of all. And it's just glad that Maloney sort of spinning around and lying there in the middle of the circuit was safe, and there was no further incident there. So yeah, a great one to watch, and what a dramatic climax to the weekend.
It's a good point you make on the no penalties, because if the FIA start to over-regulate it, the drivers just won't go for the moves, and we won't get that exciting racing. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I agree with you boys on that one. Should we talk about our feature race winner, Jack Doohan? A dominant victory, wasn't it? Snatched his 3rd in the Drivers' Championship away from Ayumu Iwasa in the final race of the season as well. And again, another one who bows out of the series on a high, Lawrence. Yeah,
absolutely. And, the biggest compliment that I can give to Jack Doohan is that I can't remember exactly what he did in this race, because he was just out there. He was sublime, managed the pace, managed the tyres really, really well, and he just looked comfortable. He looked like the fastest guy out there. He absolutely nailed qualifying, and it's another strong weekend. And when Jack Doohan is at his best, he does this. He blows everybody else away, and that talent that he has is clear. We still don't know what was going on for him at the start of the year. He had a really tough few races. I would love to know the stats of what the championship order would be if he started it halfway through the season, because I bet Jack Doohan would be winning this title if it started midway through. I'm guessing, Fraser, you're gonna tell me.
I can tell you. Do you want to know? I can tell you.
I do want to know. Go right ahead.
If the season started in Austria, Spielberg, halfway through the season, Well, if the championship started then and went all the way through to Abu Dhabi, Jack Doohan would have been the champion. Absolutely. Jack Doohan, 126 points. Victor Martins, 105 points. Teo Pourchaire, 104 points. That's what I said earlier. Victor Martins beat Teo Pourchaire by a point in the second half of the season. Ayumu Iwasa, 86 points. And Frederick Vesti, only 82 points in the second half of the season. So Jack Doohan would have been comfortably the champion for this season.
Outscored Vesti by 43 points in the second half of the season. That is massive.
It is.
That is absolutely massive.
And as you say, we don't know what was happening in the early part of the season. Qualifying was just a real issue for him in the early part of the season, wasn't it? And it was ruining his weekend. But the pace was clearly there, wasn't it? Once they worked out what that issue was, whatever it was, I don't think we'll ever find out, to be honest with you. The pace was clearly there, and Jack Doohan clearly has the talent. It's what could have been for him, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a raw talent to this driver. You look at last season when he jumped in the car, and it's even before last, even in Abu Dhabi, he went and qualified on the first row in his first session, and then came back in the first full season and did the same. And this weekend when we saw the likes of perhaps Ollie Behrman struggling from going from FP1 into qualifying. And making that quick switch between cars, Jack Doohan jumped straight out of an Alpine and pretty much ran to his car, got in it and put it on pole. And that is something that you can't do without just that natural talent and ability. And so I think he's been unfortunate, and it's nice to see that Alpine's faith in him has remained, and he will be probably at the front of the queue for an Alpine seat when it does eventually open up, if it does. And we've seen how little movement there is in the F1 driver market. It is frustrating to see these amazing F2 drivers with nowhere to go almost, and Jack Doohan is absolutely one of those where you just wish he had that chance to move up.
Do you think it helped that his cars looked the same? The fact that he went from the F1 Alpine car to an F2 car that just looked like a smaller version of an F1 Alpine car.
That must have done it. It must have been a placebo. Well, just like the blue car that I drove a moment ago is rapid, so this one can do the same. Maybe it just unlocked something.
It was the livery. That was what Ollie Behrman's issue was. He went from the Haas livery to the Prema. That makes so much sense. Yeah.
You're going to have to look at all of the FP1 outings and all the liveries and see if that holds true.
Fascinating insights you get from our well-respected Formula 2 journalists on this podcast, isn't it? So we move on from talking about liveries and God knows what else. So I'll tell you what, let's talk about. We're talking about the FP1 outing, so let's talk about them. Ollie Behrman obviously struggled moving from or adapting from Formula 1 machinery to Formula 2. Jack Doohan obviously didn't. What did you make of those drivers who did get a run out in FP1, Aaron, and who impressed you the most?
It was a good outing for all of them, actually. You're looking, especially from a F2 driver's point of view, to just get mileage under your belt. So in that sense, it was job done for all of them. And a situation like that isn't really representative of their abilities because they're going to be running to a program. I know when Vesti was in the Mercedes in Mexico, they ran him on a specific program. They didn't really get him to do any performance runs. Although in the same weekend we saw Ollie Behrman going through the S's basically sideways. So it depends what the teams want them to do, and it's all just about getting that mileage under your belt. But of course they've got to try and show their raw speed. Although in an FP1 we don't really see the opportunity to show raw speed. They don't want the cars smeared across the barriers like Carlos Sainz was in FP2. So it's a balancing act. You want to show as much as you can do, but you won't be given too much free rein. So I know I've avoided the question of who impressed the most, but I'm just trying to sort of frame it in a can't really judge too much there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at, I believe Ollie Behrman was actually slowest in FP1. The Haas hasn't been that competitive for starters, but you can't really judge the times by the run time. You can often judge it by what the teams say afterwards in terms of how maturely the drivers approached it, how well they've gelled with the team. And, Ollie Behrman's, I think that's his second FP1 outing. I think he got one in Silverstone as well. So the fact that, he's getting this at such a young age and is showing such promise is going to stand him in really good stead if he has a really solid season in F2 next year, challenges for the title, and then gets more shots in an F1 car. He could be setting himself really well for 2025, which I think everyone would like to see. And also, whilst we're talking about FP1, shout out to last year's champion, Felipe Drugovich, who looked very comfortable, looked very confident in that Aston Martin and was second, I believe. So it's good to see, it's easy to forget about him. It's been a year on since he won the title, but he's still there. He's still in that seat and probably wishing that Alonso would just stop performing at the level he is and give up and give him a chance. But, I think showing that he's ready also if that opportunity comes up for him.
I loved how the Formula 2 social pages were, including Felipe Drugovich. It was drivers past, present and future, wasn't it? So you had obviously the 7 drivers or the 6 drivers who are present Formula 2 drivers, but you also had past Formula 2 drivers, Felipe Drugovich and Pato O'Ward, who did 1 round, by the way, who they claimed for that. And then future driver Zach O'Sullivan, who still hasn't driven an F2 car, but the F2 page. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Very good, very good. You said there, Lawrence, you can't judge. I was completely judging Ollie Behrman, by the way, completely washed. Absolutely, but he finished bottom of FP1, completely washed.
How dare you say that?
I'm joking, of course. Ollie Behrman, what a talent, and why do you think he struggled adapting, Lawrence? Why do some drivers struggle and some drivers don't? Jack Doohan obviously didn't struggle. Ollie Behrman did. Why is that?
Well, I mean, everyone talks about the step up from F2 to F1 being the biggest sort of at any stage of these drivers' careers, apart from when they go from karts into proper racing cars. Just the performance of an F1 car is so different. Behrman hasn't had much time in F1 car, and that has been a really important weekend for him from that perspective. He knew that there was nothing really on the table in the championship for him, so he's probably focused more on that than the F2 running almost, because that's what's going to be more important to him in his career. He's going to get a chance to come back in F2 next year and perform. So he's probably focused on that, and then maybe just been slightly rusty getting back into the F2 car. This is still his rookie year. So for someone at such a young age with minimal experience of both F1 and F2 to go from one to the other so easily, it's difficult. And it's just, these are fundamentally different cars and different driving styles. You don't know how much Behrman's having to rewire his brain to get the most out of that Haas and then jump into his F2 car. Doohan might be somebody who, because of his particular style, because of the way that the Alpine set up, drives in a relatively similar manner between the two and makes it easier to make that change. It's so hard to judge without knowing, but I definitely think you shouldn't, if you're trying to assess Behrman's quality, you don't judge it by this weekend. Look at Baku qualifying with bent steering, for example. The guy's got talent, and that can't be forgotten.
Aaron, have you recovered from my comment yet, or have you still got a tear in your eye for that?
No, I'm good. I'm just going to say, don't judge the bear by the Haas.
Ah, very good. Very good. Oh, wow. Okay, I don't know where to go.
End.
Yeah, I don't know where to go from there. Should we rookie roundup? Should we round up our rookies? Paul Aron and Franco Colapinto obviously made their debuts this weekend. Lots of learning, Aaron, I imagine, from lots of learning to take away to build for next season, right?
Yeah, I mean, none of it's going to be really representative, though, because the car changes, which is, it isn't a good thing for them to go into an F2 race at the end of the season before the car is completely overhauled. Because, like I was saying with the FP1 outings, it's great to get the drivers in there, know the team, get to know the people in the paddock. Obviously, F3 and F2 aren't that far apart usually, so you're probably going to cross over with a few people from time to time. But Paul Aron was with Prema in F3 and he was with Trident this weekend in Formula 2. So there's obviously going to be different people there, although it's about getting to know the people. They might end up, Franco Colapinto will be in that seat next year, so he's going to be getting to know the F2 people at MP Motorsport. We're not sure yet where Paul Aron is going to drop if he does end up in Formula 2. But cool fact, that would give me two drivers to cheer for, because Ollie Behrman and Paul Aron, obvious reasons. So, yeah, it was a decent outing for both of them. They got plenty of laps under their belt. A shame that Colapinto didn't reach the flag in the feature race, but he'd done a really good job, actually. Kept it out of the wall. There was no real incidents. We see the stalls but on the grid, but we've seen that from a lot of rookie drivers first time out. Josh Mason did it in Spa. It's happened before. It'll happen again. So it just shows that the cars are tricky to actually get going. So no embarrassment there, but they didn't do themselves any disservice in the racing either.
Absolutely. You said, we obviously Colapinto confirmed MP. Paul Aron, we're not sure where he's going to be. We obviously had Michael McClure, Formula 2 commentator, Formula 2 journalist, and inside F2's journalist. He was trackside this weekend in Abu Dhabi. And shall I read out his? I think this is pretty much confirmed for 2024 in terms of the lineups. Do you want to know where Paul Aron? He's got Paul Aron down to be, Aaron.
Isn't it high tech?
It is high tech indeed. So we got Prema, Antonelli, and Ollie Behrman. ART, Zach O'Sullivan, and Victor Martins. High tech, Paul Aron and Henri Cordil. Carlin, Zane Maloney, and Miata coming across from Super Formula. That'll be very, very interesting. Dams, Jack Crawford, and JM Correa. Virtuosi, Bortoletto, and Kush Mani. That has been confirmed today. We are recording on Monday evening, so that is confirmed. VAR, Enzo Fittipaldi and Rafael Villagomez, which will be interesting. That's going to be the smallest Formula 2 pairing, probably since Carlin this season, to be fair, with Zane Maloney and Enzo Fittipaldi. Trident, Richard Vashaw, Roman Stanek, PHM, Ralph Boschong returning again, and Josh Dirksen. Campos, Pepe Marti, and Isaac Hajar. And MP, obviously already confirmed, Dennis Hauger and Franco Colapinto. And a few things to note then. So Josh Mason will be testing for PHM instead of Ralph Boschong at the post-season Abu Dhabi test. And Ollie Gerfer will be testing instead of Roman Stanek for Trident in the post-season test. But yeah, that's looking like the lineups for 2024. So in answer to your question, Paul Aron or Paul De Vries, maybe I should have called him. I'm not sure if anyone's seen those tweets going around on X of Formula One getting Paul De Vries with the Estonian flag and trident for Formula One. I'm not sure if you've seen those tweets going around. If you haven't, go and check out Paul Aron's Twitter, because it is very, very funny and he's taking the mick out of it. But yeah, anyway, I'm rambling on here. That is where people are going to be in 2024. Your thoughts on that, I guess, guys? Initial reaction to that? Some strong lineups there, Lawrence?
Oh, yeah. So some really, really strong lineups, and, some drivers getting chances in sort of more what we'd call traditional front-running cars. The likes of, I'm particularly excited for Kushmaini in the Virtuosi. I think he might have gone slightly under the radar this season with how he's driven. I think he will really impress next year, and obviously Prema will be one to watch, especially with Kimi Antonelli coming into that team. I think everybody in motorsport is waiting to see what this sort of young prodigy that is Kimi Antonelli can deliver in an F2 car after making that leap up the order, skipping Formula 3. There's not many drivers that junior developments, obviously he's part of the Mercedes junior team, there's not many that will see their drivers move up like that. Obviously, Max Verstappen is the last one to have done that successfully. So that bodes well for him if he's walking in his shoes.
A few rumours started to circulate as well that if Kimi Antonelli has a good season, maybe finishes top 3 in Formula 2, he could be in with a shout at the Williams seat in 2025. Apparently, Toto Wolff is lining that up with James Vowles. Antonelli's going to be an interesting one for next season, isn't he, Aaron?
Yeah, I'm just pleased that I got that little punt right on our predictions show for the grid. I think we got one each by the end of all of that, didn't we? So
yeah, the less said about that, the better, I think. Although I dare say we're going to say more about it quite soon.
Probably.
Yeah, I think we should delete that video from our YouTube channel, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
so,
unlist it right now.
Yeah. Absolutely. Chaps, shall we have a look at the final team standings or final standings of the season before we go? Théo Pourchaire is our 2023 champion, winning the series by 11 points in the end from Frederick Vesti. Jack Doohan sneaked into the top 3 of the standings at the very last moment after winning the feature race at Yas Marina. He moved above Ayumu Owasa. Victor Martins ended the season as top rookie, finishing 20 points ahead of Prema's Ollie Behrman. Enzo Fittipaldi, Dennis Hauger, Richard Verschoor and Zane Maloney round out the top 10. And the team standings? ART win their first team's title in the modern era of Formula 2, holding off the mighty Prema after a season-long battle. Rodin Carlin were the best of the rest, ahead of Dams and Virtuosi, who managed to beat MP Motorsport to a top 5 finish on the final day of the season. VAR recorded their best Formula 2 finish with a 7th place finish in the end. Hi-Tech, Campos and Trident round out the top 10. And PHM were the only team not to win a race, and incidentally not the only team not to score a point all season long either. I'm sure there'll be lots of learnings for them next season. Okay, that's all we got time for today, but it's not the last time you'll be hearing from us this season. As I said earlier, we've got a post-season review podcast coming your way over the next couple of weeks, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Make sure you're subscribed, make sure you've got notifications on our YouTube channel, on Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast, and you will get that notification. And get involved in the conversation as well on our social media channels, on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, on Instagram, on TikTok. Get involved in the conversation. But from me, Fraser Ford, and all of us here at Inside F2, we'll see you next time.